Hey guys, I'm Roxy Striar here, and I have interviewed some of the largest celebrities in the world. But today I am interviewing somebody that I love more than anything, somebody whose story is so incredible and that I can't even believe I get to talk to. And that is my grandfather, who I call Papo. He is 92 years old. He fought in World War II. You guys can call him Papo if you want, but he was also born as Donald Miller, Danny. Papo, hello.
Hello.
I'm so happy that I get to talk to you today.
And me too.
And of course, over on the couch is my beautiful Grammy. You guys can call her Grammy if you want, but she is Lenore Miller at 90 years old. I know you don't believe me, but it is true. Hi, Grammy.
Hi, baby. How are you?
I'm doing great. All right.
This should be interesting, hopefully.
For you, you've heard these stories forever. You've
Right.
heard these stories for the last few decades.
We're going to be married 70 years, so when I first met him, he was prolific with the stories, not so much now.
And you guys met after the war?
Met him once during the war when I was in high school in a Gilbert and Sullivan play, but he he came with a boyfriend of mine, and then I met him. Really, I met him after the war, like 2 years after, really.
Unrelated to this, Grammy had 12 marriage proposals at one point, so she was quite the catch. Papo, you finally landed it. Good job.
How come you're not saying anything?
I'm lucky I'm alive.
Yeah, that is true. So, Papo, you fought in World War II. You actually enlisted when you were 18 years old,
That's true.
and you had tried to when you were 17.
Yes.
So, why on earth would somebody try to go to the war prior to when they had to?
Oh, I don't know. At the time, 17-year-olds were not very bright.
I get that.
So I don't think I really knew what I was trying to get into.
How come you didn't just wait until you were drafted?
Well, because I knew what I wanted to do if I got into the service. I knew that I wanted to fly. And if I allowed myself to be drafted, they would select where I would go, and it certainly wouldn't be what I wanted.
Why did you want to fly? Did it seem safer to be away from everything going on the
No,
ground?
it had nothing to do with safety. It just had to do with what I really longed to do ultimately in my life, and that was to fly.
Prior to you being based in Europe, because you were eventually based in England, what was your training process like?
Part of my training was in the United States, and then I was sent to England, where I had gotten the rest of my basic training and additional training in flight.
First, he said the basic training, and then they realized he was supposed to go into Air Force training. And at that time, he was training to be a pilot, a bombardier, an officer in the Air Force. And he was stationed in Florida, in Tampa. I remember he said he slept in the Everglades, and they had to wear, because of the snakes on the ground, their boots all the time. And then in Miami, and then they washed the program out. And luckily, he had learned code,
Morse code.
Morse code. And so they kept him in the Air Force instead of sending him. I think you had once said that they were thinking of sending you to the 82nd. And I think parachute, whatever it was, he was able to stay in the Air Force as a radio operator and gunner.
How did you, Papo, then become a radio operator? How does that happen? Did they look at you and they say, what do you want to do? And you say, I want to be a radio operator. Or do they look at your strengths and they say,
No.
you're going to be a radio operator?
They knew what they needed, so they would select guys and just put them into things, and that's how it just happened to me.
And what did that job entail? What does it mean to be a radio operator and gunner? Where were you positioned on the plane?
I was put in a radio room on the plane.
Is that separate from everything else?
Yeah, it's a specific room that had all of the radio equipment in it.
On a B-17.
Yeah.
And who were you talking to?
So I spoke to the plane that was in charge of the group of planes that I was part of.
How could you be a radio operator and a gunner at the same time?
The need was usually not at the same time. It was, I was a gunner when I had to be. I was a radio operator always.
And would the rest of the guys in your group just come and get you and say, we need you to be a gunner now? We're going through some fire.
I had an outfit like this that I was connected to, and the things that were needed of me were told to me over the phone.
I've heard stories of yours growing up, and you told me that sometimes the guys would give you a little bit of crap. Mm-hmm. Like they would try to mess with you because they knew you were in a separate room.
Right.
So they would try to almost scare you.
They didn't almost scare me. They scared me.
What would they do?
They would say terrible things, like, can you see out of your window right now? Can you see all of those planes coming at us?
And there wouldn't be any planes actually there?
No.
That kind of joking around, was it funny at the time because you're kids?
Initially, it was really scary. But it was only initially scary for a couple of times. And then it was like a bad joke.
What's really unique about your experience is that for a lot of people who were fighting, they're fighting in World War II because they have to be there or because they believe in the cause. But for you, as a Jewish man growing up, it's very different because you're in the Air Force and you're lucky enough to be an American Jew. And had you been somewhere else, then your people were being persecuted. So how did that affect your journey throughout the war? Did everybody know that you were Jewish?
It was never a secret that I was Jewish. But it was never a secret because I made sure that it was not a secret.
You were very open about telling everybody.
You bet. There were two things on my mind, in a way. One of them was that I was proud of my Judaism. And two, I knew how badly the Jews were treated by the Germans whenever the Germans had a chance to lay their hands on any of us. The Jews were treated very badly by the Germans. There was a point in time when it became known that the Germans were responsible for the death of somewhere in the 6 million number. So one of the things that played on my mind was I needed to try to get even for that.
The 9 people you were with, did they ever poke fun at you for being Jewish, or was it just like another guy on the flight?
No, I was always treated as just another guy on the flight who incidentally happened to be Jewish, and they didn't give a damn about that, which I appreciated, by the way.
I have this amazing thing which tells me all of the flights that you actually took, 38 missions that you went on.
Right.
And amazingly enough, they're all documented, and every one of them is documented with who flew with you and where you were going and what date you were going and what position and ranking you had on that flight, which is pretty incredible. So of those 38 missions you went on, 35 of those were successful. Was that a number that they told you you had to hit prior to being able to go home?
It was a number that was not selected specifically for me. It was a number that was used for all of the guys that were flying missions.
Every person needed to hit 35 missions before
that
going
was
home.
Considered, completing your mission assignment.
When you first went there, you only had to hit 25 missions. And then they called a meeting and they told you it's now 30 missions. And you said, then they called another meeting and you said, let's not go.
So they kept raising the number on you.
Yeah.
That's kind of frustrating. You have no say in it.
No.
You just have to keep going.
You just have to nod your head and go.
Did part of you want to keep going?
In my case, I always had the feeling that that's what they wanted of me, and that's what I wanted. Because I wanted to go after the Germans, because I felt that I would like to try to get even.
There are 3 of these missions that were not successful, where either something happened to your plane or you were actually shot down.
Mm-hmm.
And all 3 of those times, you ended up in non-friendly territory.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the 3 times that you were shot down or had a plane malfunction?
Yeah.
One of those times that you were having a plane malfunction, you guys actually went into the hedges and
the hedgerows.
And you had somebody who was in the bottom of your plane. So how does that the plane works where they're at the bottom? That's where all the bombs are kept, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And the bombardier is based in there.
Yep.
And when you guys went into the hedgerow, he was not quick enough to come out?
I vaguely remember his saying that they had to land in France. And the pilot had told everybody to get your things together, we have to land. I guess something I assumed happened to the plane. And I don't know if it was the bombardier. I think he said, but I'm not sure. It was a long time ago. Who was sort of lazy gathering all his stuff together. And he was one of the first to go. And I don't know what happened with the second one. It was the third one in Belgium that I remember.
The third one, you're talking about the third time when he was actually shot down, which was during the Battle of the Bulge. And that is when the weather was really bad. You guys hadn't been able to fly for a while. So when you were finally able to fly, you were flying very low and you guys actually got shot down.
Right.
When you get shot down like that, you had to parachute out of the plane.
If you were high enough.
If you were high enough. What is going through your head when anytime your plane is landing in foreign territory?
If you're a normal human being, you're frightened.
Are you guys all talking with each other and saying different things, or are you just...
Not while it's happening, no. Because when something like that is happening, you immediately think to your training. So what do I do now? You were trained for it, so that's where your mind is.
And
getting yourself set for what's obviously going to happen. Your plane is going to crash.
When you crashed that time, you held on to your parachute handle so hard that you actually brought it home with you.
Yeah.
Did you keep a lot of different mementos throughout the war, different things that you would bring home?
There wasn't much that I did. It's that I knew that I was going to have to bail out of that plane. Bail out of the plane, I have to take my, grab the parachute handle and so on. So in having to do that, I just grabbed it and I just hung on to it. And I wound up taking it home with me.
At that point, is it kind of every man for themselves once you hit the ground? Or do you try to find all of the people?
we would really try to get together with as many of the guys as we could.
And then do you just start to try to look for other Americans, or how do you try to get out of there at that point?
The first thing you do is you start looking for some of the other guys so that you're not alone, you know. And that's where it all begins. You try to get with the other guys, and if you're lucky enough to get yourself a group of 4 or 5 guys, at least it gave you some feeling of security.
When you hit the ground, were you ever alone? Could you ever not find somebody else, or did you always find?
No, I was always able to find somebody else.
I think you told me that practically the whole crew, and you found a tree, and you all sat around the tree with your 45s,
Yeah.
pistols out, because at that time the Germans had stolen American Jeeps, American uniforms. So the Germans were coming into there and killing Americans. In fact, I think you said a Jeep pulled up with Americans. And at first they didn't trust you. They began asking you questions about who played for the Yankees, et cetera, et cetera. And
So
then
they would try to quiz you to make sure you were American?
Right.
and then they took you
And we
home.
would do the same thing.
What kind of things would you ask?
Things that local Americans would understand, you know, and could respond to.
This is an air medal that you received.
Yep.
One of the things you brought back.
Yep.
What is this medal for?
Well, it was not for a specific thing. It was for a group of things
What kinds of
that
things?
I had.
Flying successfully?
And most of the reason for that were things that happened on the ground after having flown, you know, a mission.
What do you mean, things that happened on the ground?
In many instances, you'd fly a mission and ultimately have to land. And once you've landed, there were things that you had to do while you were on the ground to support yourself against any foreign troops that were around and so on. So it was a combination of flight and then ground stuff.
I think somebody told me, because you used to say I should have a lot more bars or stars, and somebody just told me that I should call the American Legion
Mm-hmm.
or Veterans of Foreign Wars, and they would have your record and will send you the rest of the medals or attachments
The stars, yeah.
to the medals that you already have.
Who gives you a medal, or who gives you the stars? Is there a ceremony, or does somebody just stop by where you're sleeping, pop in, hand you something?
It was more of a celebrity than that. It was,
A bigger deal.
yeah. And all the troops in the outfit that you were in or attached to would all be called together, and then a presentation would be made.
Speaking of celebrity, Papo, you were on the same base as Clark Gable.
Yes.
What was that like? Did you see him walking? What was he doing?
He was a photography officer. He took pictures.
Was everybody very aware? Holy crap, that's Clark Gable?
Yep. He was never treated like, oh boy, that's Clark Gable. That was not the way he was treated. He was treated like a GI. He was another soldier. And that was it. He was a nice guy, by the way.
Papo, of the 9 people that you originally were with on your flight, do you have any contact with any of them anymore? Do you know how any of them turned out or what happened with any of them?
I'm not 1,000% sure, but close. Most of them are gone.
As in most of them at this point, because you're 92?
No, most of those guys were killed.
Of the 9?
Yep.
While you were flying with them?
Some when I was flying with them. Some having been shot down or killed while flying, attacked by fighter planes. And
what would happen, Papo, if you were on a mission and somebody who was on your plane was shot?
not only was I a radio operator on the plane, I was like the plane's doctor.
Were you trained to be the doctor on the plane?
Yeah.
If somebody was hurt while you guys were flying, I would
take care of them.
How much training did you have? Were you able to give stitches? Were you able to heal clean wounds? What were you able to do?
I was able to handle wounds. I was instructed on how to stitch, but I never did.
What if somebody, when you were flying, was beyond your help? Would you guys turn back?
No.
So if somebody was severely injured, you would keep going about your mission until it was complete?
Yep. That guy would probably die.
On the plane?
Yeah.
And then what would you do?
Nothing.
You just leave him on the plane?
Well, when we landed, his body would be taken off the plane, and they would deal with him. He'd be buried right away, or he would be given medical attention if they felt that it was, viable.
If something like that happened, Papo, were you guys given the next day off? Or was there ever...
There was never a next day off. Especially if we were in combat.
When I look here, for December, the first December that you were there and you started flying, in December you flew on the 5th, the 11th, the 12th, the 28th, and the 31st. The 31st, I believe, being the one in which you were shot down.
Mm-hmm.
So that, on one occasion, that was a back-to-back day. Was that because there was nobody else to take that mission? Or why would you be flying back-to-back days?
Because they apparently felt that it was necessary.
It happened a couple of times.
They didn't just do things. They had a reason for the stuff that they did with you.
Turned out after a while, as they began losing more and more men, Papa became a pickup radio operator gunner, so that he was on different planes.
Right, because sometimes I look at this and I see that he's flying with very similar 9 people.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's completely different.
As you get more towards the end, you see only maybe 1 or 2 of the originals are left.
Was it more challenging to fly with people that you didn't know as well, Papo?
Yeah, because you knew what to expect from the guys that you had flown with.
You started as a sergeant, Papo, and then you became a tech sergeant by the time that you were done.
Yeah.
What was the difference between those two things?
A sergeant just had 3 stripes. A staff sergeant would have 3 stripes and 1 under.
And you were a staff sergeant at some point as well.
Yeah. And ultimately went on to be a tech sergeant, which was 1 stripe away from being a master sergeant.
What is the difference between what you have to do? Do you have more responsibilities?
Yeah.
Did you want to keep rising up in the ranks?
Yeah.
Everybody does?
Sure. You also get more money.
How do you become one to the next? Do you just, the longer you stay there, the higher you go, or do you have to?
It's the stuff that you do and how you do it and how successful you are at what it is that you're doing.
Speaking of things that you do, I remember that at the time you were keeping kosher when you went into the Air Force as a Jewish man growing up. Were you able to continue doing that?
No.
You had to stop? They forced you
You had to
to?
eat whatever the hell you could get to eat. It was not, it was, we didn't have too many kosher Jewish chefs.
What was your living situation like?
Well, of course, it would depend upon the area that you were in, as to what was available to you in the way of a soldier's life who was doing the stuff that you were doing. It was, you were not assured of a nice warm bed or anything like that. You had to be lucky about what your living conditions would be like.
Were some of these guys your friends? Would you have considered them your friends?
As you moved around from one position to another, you made friends as you were able to.
The plane you were on, you guys called Lucky Lady.
Mm-hmm.
How did it get that name?
I don't know. I was presented the plane at some given point in time when I was moved from one plane to another, and I was suddenly given this plane called Lucky Lady. And when it was told to me, that I was really very happy about it because I loved the name. I thought that maybe Lucky Lady would really be a lucky lady for me.
And you're here, so
So I won that one.
thank goodness, because otherwise I wouldn't be here either.
That's true.
Since the war, you have had quite a medical history. You have MS, and you wear hearing aids and have for quite some time, and you have had ulcers and all different medical issues. Yet you've made it this far, so you're doing okay. Do you attribute a lot of those things to being in the Air Force?
How about all of them?
Do you ever at any point resent having to have gone to fight because of some of the issues that it's caused?
No, I had a way out, and my way out was going to the Veterans Administration and having them take care of every goddamn thing that was wrong with me and not charging me 5 cents for it.
Do you feel like the Veterans Administration, the VA, is as strong as it could be?
You bet. They're the best.
And they've treated you really well.
You bet.
You feel that way too, Grammy?
They've been wonderful. It may not be the same all over the country, but the one
In Los Angeles.
Right, has been wonderful.
Boy, they are fabulous. Just fabulous. I walk in and it's like God walked into the place.
As they should be, because you risked your life for this country.
And you know what? I'd do it again.
Really?
Yeah.
What makes you say that?
Because there's no other country in the world like this one. None. And I have no feeling at all for anybody who has lived in this country and would not be willing to put his life on the line to save this country.
Papo, how aware were you of what was going on during World War II?
Well, we were kept aware of what was going on.
Every morning, did they update you guys on what the current status was?
Yeah. If it wasn't every morning, it was getting damn close to it.
So you knew which territories had been taken over by Hitler.
Yes.
You knew how many deaths there had been. You knew where the camps were. You knew...
Boy, they made sure to let us know about how many people were murdered in various places by the Germans and so on. We were really up on every one of those things. And as a result of the knowledge that we were given, when we went out to fight them, we felt that we had every good reason, to go out and do the job.
As a 18-year-old when you went, but you were 20 when you were actually over there.
No, I was closer to 40.
Did you ever second guess yourself? Were you ever concerned because, like you, the people that you were dropping these bombs on, the people that you were keeping as POWs were also kids? Did that ever get to you? Or
No.
Why do you say no?
Because they weren't just kids. They were German kids. And they were trying to kill us. And that made them special.
When you finally had completed all of these successful 35 missions, so first they told you needed 20, and you did that, and then you needed 25. When you completed 35 missions successfully, does somebody come and tell you, okay, now it's time to go home?
No. It was never time to go home. No, at some point in time, after I had completed all of those missions and so on, then there started to be conversation about, that there was a chance that we could be sent someplace where there was no fighting going on, and that soon after that we could, wind up getting sent home.
How did you get home from Europe?
There was a chance that I could be flown home, and there was a chance that I could go home by boat.
You wouldn't fly again. You didn't fly again till 1951.
Yeah.
You said they were war wearies.
Well, that was why I wouldn't fly.
Yeah.
If I had a plane that I could trust, I would have flown.
But you waited for a boat.
Yes. I didn't fly a normal plane. I flew bombers. Now, when I say I flew bombers, it was one specific bomber that I flew. And that one specific bomber that I flew was called the B-17. Now, of all the bombers that were flown during World War II, the B-17 was the best goddamn plane that was ever built. I was satisfied, having flown that plane so many times, that I could trust it. Now, there were other planes that just flew one damn mission after another, and the plane was a piece of shit. And it was dangerous to fly them. And we used to call them war wearies. The plane, those planes have flown too many times.
You didn't want to go home on a war weary because you felt like it was bound to...
Wouldn't make it back. So I stayed away from war wearies.
He stopped flying, I think, in March, and he ended up home 2 days before his boat landed
was-
off of Coney Island.
Yeah.
2 days coming from Brooklyn, that was pretty close. 2 days before the European War ended.
And I had all of the
May.
guys saying to me, for Christ's sake, you could walk home from here.
Did you know that the war was about to end when you got off the boat?
We knew that it was getting close.
Papo, this says on the top of this, 351st Bomb Group crew member.
That's me.
What does that mean?
I was in that bomb group, the
So-
351st Bomb Group.
And that's the 9 people you started with were at part of the 351st Bomb Group?
Yeah, but a bomb group is, bada boom, big.
Oh, there's more people than that.
Oh, yeah, there's a shit house full.
How many people are in a bomb group?
Oh, hundreds.
Did you know everybody in your bomb group?
No.
What is the 510? You could point to those are the symbols.
510th Bomb Group.
What does 510th Bomb Group mean?
I mean, the 510th was part of the 351st.
There's somebody on this list who was in your squadron, who we found out the other day. His name is Ernest Thanasides,
Right.
and you guys called him the Greek,
Yeah, Ernesto Thanasides.
Anastothanasides. And we looked him up the other day online, and it looks like he is also still alive in New Jersey.
1923.
So
Unbelievable.
I'm just saying that out loud. Maybe the internet can work its magic and he can find a way back into anybody who knows him or knows his whereabouts.
Yeah, I'd love to find him.
It looks like the 2 of you guys
We were together.
made it. The rest of the people on here, Papo, do you remember everybody that you were with, the 9 of them?
I remember a lot of them, but most of them didn't make it.
As you go through, you see less and less of the names. One that I saw towards the end was Heinrich.
Oscar Heinrich.
Yeah, he was the
He was the German.
What did you guys call him?
We used to call him the Nazi.
Did that bother him?
No, he was used to it.
Did you have any nicknames?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What'd they call you?
Miller the Jew.
Miller the Jew. So you had the Greek, the Nazi, and the Jew.
Yeah.
It sounds like a start to a very strange joke. All walk into a
a
bar,
love it.
you know? Papa, did you, in the 2 years that you were in the Air Force, did you have, this is such a strange question, but did you ever have any fun?
Any fun?
Was any of it ever fun?
Yeah, there were times when we used to jazz each other constantly. You know, everybody in the outfit was a comedian. Everybody. So, yeah, we had some good times. But then again, you know, they'd wake you up one morning and the good time was over. Because you had to go out and play.
Did you ever get to say, no, I can't today, or I'm sick, or I can't go, or if they told you to go, you were going?
They told you were going, you went. And there was no such thing as being sick or tired.
When you came back to the United States, was it challenging
Coming back to the States?
and reacclimating with normal life?
No, because we came back, you know, from the service over there, fighting and all of that stuff, and came back to where that was not happening. And we were treated like we were very special people. Because when we came back, they knew what we came back from.
You guys are called the greatest generation of all time. Do you feel like you earned that title?
Yeah. Not because I want to, think I'm a great person or anything like that at all. But because of what I was subjected to and how I reacted to it, I was given a job to do, virtually every day or every couple of days. And I took the job and did it. And I shut my mouth. I just did it. So I thought of myself as having been a good American.
And today, do you feel nothing but proud of what you did?
Absolutely.
You went on to become the vice president of Marshals,
Yep.
which is an incredibly different thing to be doing.
Yep.
How did you find transitioning from being in the Air Force and fighting to save this country and save your life every single day to helping to run a massive company like Marshall's?
I discovered in a relatively short period of time that there were similarities, even though none of it had to do with killing people, but it had to do with directing people and making certain that the directions were being followed and executed properly. And it's not that I was a hard ass, but I expected things of the people that worked for me. And I made it known about what it was that I expected of them. And in letting them know what I expected of them, I also let them know how important it was that they do what was expected of them. And that what was expected of them was not anything unusual, so different,
I can only know this because of movies, because you are the closest person to me who I know who actually went and fought. But you see that people come home and they have PTSD or they have nightmares or they aren't able to talk about what happened. Did that happen to you at all?
No, I can't say that happened to me, because there are things that I saw that happened to people. And I just tried very hard to make sure that they didn't happen to me. Or if they did, that I was able to stop it and do something about it. And I was a hard ass about stuff like that on me.
But it was an internal. When he came home, they sent him to the hospital in Atlantic City. And he worked with the doctor and the psychologist, because they were talking, the war in the Pacific was still going on, sending him with the B-25s to fight over on the Pacific, when the doctor said absolutely not. And that's when he developed ulcers.
They were going to send him back, but
they
to
were
the Pacific?
talking about, because the war was still on,
Yep.
about sending back to the Pacific. But,
On a shitty plane.
oh, well, I don't know much about the planes.
Plane was a piece of crap.
Oh, okay.
Papa,
He developed bleeding ulcers where they finally had to operate. In 1951, he hemorrhaged. So that was all from the war.
from stress. Papa, have any idea how many people that you killed during the war?
No, I had no way of knowing anything like that.
When you were dropping bombs, did you guys have any idea how many people were in that location or what the population of a place was?
No, certain targets that we had an idea. In other words, if it was a plant that was making something that, fit into the war effort for them against us, we would have an idea of approximately how many people were in that plant and so on. And we'd go and bomb the plant.
Was it usually in the hundreds of people?
Oh, yeah.
I see, yeah, you were a synthetic oil factory,
Yeah.
synthetic oil plant, railway workshops. For all of these places that you went, did it make any difference to you what your target was?
No. It made a difference in terms of whether the target was some sort of joke that they were doing, or that it was a plant that was making something that was really a danger to us, and so, you know what I mean?
What do you mean a joke they were doing?
I mean, so every once in a while, they'd pick a target for us, and we'd look at what the target was, and we'd say, what the hell are they screwing around with this? This is a piece of shit. It doesn't really mean anything. But
They must have had their reasons.
yeah, they would have their reasons.
Papo, how do you feel about German people today?
Is that the same as it was? You know, so I just have a thing about the Germans were really vicious at the time, you know, that the war was going on. But this is another time.
Now, Germans are some of our best friends, some of Israel's best friends. So times change.
Would you ever go back there?
Where, to Germany? I'd have to have a pretty good reason for it.
What do you feel when sometimes we'll be out to lunch or something, Papo, and I'll notice people will come over to you if you're wearing this jacket,
Yeah.
and they'll say thank you for your service.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
It makes me feel good. Guys that will see me in this jacket and come over to me and ask me, was I in the 8th Air Force? And I say, yes, I was. He said, and they would say, well, did you fly in combat? I'd say, yes, I did. Say, how many combat missions did you fly? And I said, wait, I'll turn around, you can count them. And I turn around and they say, oh my God.
Did it feel like forever when you were doing it?
No, not when I was doing it. When I was doing it, I was so into it, I just couldn't wait for the next day that I was going to do it. We just knew how important what we were doing was. It was a job that we had to do, and we just went out and did it.
Papo, thank you so much for your service. I don't say it enough, and I love you. I mean, when I say this to some people, but I really mean it to you, I wouldn't be here without you. And without all of these missions, a lot of people wouldn't be here without you.
I'm glad I was able to do it and come back.
You and me both. Guys, that was Danny Miller, my Papo, Lenore Miller, my Grammy. This has been unbelievable, and thank you guys so much for watching.